Picture this: you're exploring the silent, lightless depths of the ocean, miles below the surface where no sunlight ever reaches, and your sonar suddenly picks up something impossible, a series of vast, geometric shapes that shouldn't be there. Structures so precisely arranged, so clearly designed, that they look like the work of master architects, yet they rest in a place humanity wasn't supposed to reach for centuries. This isn't science fiction. This is the reality that faced a team of deep-sea researchers just a few decades ago, when they first laid digital eyes on what we now call the Oceanic Vaults. These aren't just ruins, they're enigmas carved in stone, lying in the crushing dark, waiting to be understood. What makes the Oceanic Vaults so captivating isn't just their location, it's their profound mystery. The blueprints, painstakingly reconstructed from scans, reveal a level of architectural sophistication that doesn't match any known era in human history. We're talking about features that rival or even surpass the engineering marvels of ancient Rome or the medieval cathedrals of Europe, yet these structures were built under conditions that would challenge modern engineers. How and why? Who could have designed such places, and what purpose did they serve? These questions have ignited fiery debates among historians, archaeologists, and geologists, pulling our understanding of the past into uncharted waters. In this video, we're setting out on a journey to explore one of history's most compelling puzzles. We'll delve into the disputed origins of the Oceanic Vaults, examine why they clash so dramatically with accepted medieval timelines, and weigh the theories, from forgotten advanced civilizations to natural wonders mistaken for something more. You'll hear from experts who have dedicated their lives to uncovering the truth, and you'll see why, after all these years, the mystery only seems to deepen. So settle in, open your mind to the possibility that history as we know it might be incomplete, that there are still wonders hidden in the deep, waiting to rewrite our story. It was the late 1980s when a routine geological survey turned into one of the most astonishing finds of the century. A research vessel, equipped with state-of-the-art side-scan sonar, was mapping the seabed in a remote part of the Atlantic. The team was looking for clues about tectonic plate movement, not ancient architecture. But as the sonar pulses echoed back, the technicians monitoring the screens saw something that defied all expectation. Instead of the expected gentle slopes and random rock formations of the abyssal plain, the readout displayed a series of sharp, angular, and impossibly symmetrical shapes. These weren't gentle curves or the chaotic rubble of a landslide. They were right angles, perfect circles, and long, straight lines that stretched for hundreds of meters across the ocean floor, over 2 miles beneath the surface. The initial reaction aboard the ship was one of pure disbelief, followed by the assumption of a technical glitch. Perhaps the sonar was miscalibrated, or they were seeing an artifact of the water column. But after recalibrating the equipment and making several more passes over the area, the images only became clearer and more detailed. They revealed what appeared to be the outlines of vast chambers, connecting corridors, and what some described as towering archways, all resting in the silent, eternal dark. The scale was monumental, suggesting a complex that would rival many of the great structures on land. Yet, it was located in a place humanity had only just begun to explore, a crushing environment devoid of light and oxygen, where no known civilization could have possibly built. Upon their return, the discovery was met with intense skepticism from the broader scientific community. The most immediate and logical explanation was that these were bizarre but natural geological formations. Perhaps it was an unusually regular outcrop of basalt columns or a unique crystallization process. For years, the data was filed away, a curious anomaly discussed in niche oceanographic circles but largely dismissed. The true turning point came nearly a decade later with the advent of more sophisticated technology, autonomous underwater vehicles, or a UVS, capable of descending to these crushing depths equipped with high-resolution cameras and multi-beam sonar, were sent to investigate. What they captured was staggering. The new scans provided a three-dimensional map of the site with centimeter-level accuracy. This was no longer just a series of mysterious shapes on a screen. It was a detailed architectural plan. The data showed evidence of precisely cut stone blocks fitted together without mortar, drainage channels designed to handle immense water pressure, and layouts that followed sophisticated geometric principles. The structures displayed a clear intention, a purposeful design that screamed of intelligent engineering. This was the moment the term Oceanic Vaults was coined, and the moment the discovery erupted from an oceanic oddity into a full-blown historical enigma that would captivate and divide experts across the globe. When the first detailed scans of the Oceanic Vaults were presented at academic conferences, the reaction was a mixture of awe and profound skepticism, splitting the scientific community into two distinct and passionate camps. On one side, a wave of dramatic early theories emerged, attempting to explain the inexplicable. Some researchers proposed that these were the remnants of a sophisticated ancient civilization, one that flourished during the last ice age when sea levels were significantly lower, a culture so advanced that it was completely erased from our historical memory by some cataclysm. Others ventured into even more speculative territory, suggesting the involvement of extraterrestrial visitors or a lost branch of humanity possessing knowledge far beyond what we've ever credited to our ancestors. These ideas, while captivating for the public, were met with immediate and sharp criticism from mainstream historians and archaeologists. Their primary counter-argument was a simple but powerful one: a complete absence of corroborating evidence. There were no related artifacts, no similar terrestrial ruins, and not a single shred of mention in any known historical record, from medieval chronicles to ancient texts, that could account for a society capable of such monumental underwater engineering. The opposition, largely led by geologists and more conservative academics, put forward a much more grounded, if less thrilling, explanation. They argued that human perception is notoriously prone to pareidolia, the psychological phenomenon of seeing familiar patterns like faces or structures in random stimuli. What the sonar and early submersibles were interpreting as arches and corridors, they suggested, could be the result of entirely natural geological processes. They pointed to well-documented formations like tessellated pavements, where erosion creates startlingly regular geometric patterns in rock, or massive basalt columns formed by the cooling of lava, which can appear eerily man-made. Perhaps, they reasoned, a unique confluence of tectonic activity, sediment deposition, and erosion over millions of years had sculpted these formations by pure chance. They emphasized that the ocean floor is one of the most geologically dynamic and least understood places on Earth, full of wonders we have yet to classify. Yet, the proponents of an artificial origin found the natural formation theory equally difficult to swallow. They countered that while pareidolia is a real risk, it couldn't consistently account for the sheer complexity and recurring patterns found across the entire site. The precision of the 90-degree angles, the repetitive symmetry in the chamber layouts, and the apparent inclusion of features like what looked like pressure relief channels seemed to defy random chance. For them, the design was too purposeful, too intelligent. This fundamental disagreement wasn't just a minor academic squabble, it was a clash of entire worldviews. It pitted a strict, evidence-based interpretation of history against the possibility that our historical timeline might be profoundly incomplete. This deep division, established in those early years, didn't just create a debate, it laid the foundation for a decades-long intellectual stalemate, with each side marshalling its arguments and digging in for a long fight over the soul of a mystery. This proposed medieval origin for the Oceanic Vaults is perhaps the most intellectually jarring of all the theories, because it forces us to confront a glaring and uncomfortable anomaly in our historical record. We have a fairly comprehensive understanding of medieval European technology, the cranes, the pulleys, the mortars, and the maritime capabilities of the time. Constructing something of this scale on land would have been a monumental undertaking for the greatest kingdoms. Doing so 2 miles beneath the ocean surface seems, by all known metrics, utterly impossible. The pressure at those depths is crushing, the cold is absolute, and the darkness is impenetrable. How could any medieval society without electricity, without pressurized suits, without even a fundamental understanding of oceanography, have even surveyed the site, let alone built upon it? The very idea stretches credulity to its breaking point. This is where the puzzle becomes so fascinating. Proponents of a medieval link aren't just making wild guesses, they're trying to plug this impossibility into the gaps of our historical knowledge. They point to enigmatic and powerful maritime cultures whose full reach we might not fully appreciate. The most frequently cited example is the Tamil Chola dynasty of southern India, a naval superpower of its time that dominated the Indian Ocean trade routes around the 11th century. Their shipbuilding was advanced, and their architectural achievements on land, like the Grand Brihadiswara Temple, demonstrate a mastery of stone and scale. Could a kingdom with such seafaring prowess have ventured further than we've ever imagined and attempted something never before recorded? It's a compelling thought, but there's a deafening silence. No Chola texts, inscriptions, or oral traditions even hint at underwater construction of any kind. Another speculative thread leads to the shadowy world of medieval monastic military orders, like the Knights Templar. Often the subject of conspiracy theories about hidden knowledge and lost treasures, some researchers suggest such a wealthy, secretive, and internationally connected organization could have possessed or discovered advanced architectural techniques that were never entered into the common historical ledger. The theory goes that they might have built these vaults as ultra-secure repositories for relics or wealth, far from the reach of kings and popes. While this makes for a thrilling narrative, it relies entirely on circumstantial links and the aura of mystery that surrounds these orders, rather than on any concrete evidence found at the sites themselves. This is the core of the medieval paradox. Even if we entertain these intriguing possibilities, we are still left with an insurmountable problem: the complete absence of a technological or cultural footprint. A project of this magnitude would have required a massive workforce of highly specialized engineers, stonemasons, and divers. It would have consumed vast resources and required revolutionary inventions in diving bells, underwater cement, and pressure management. Such a colossal endeavor couldn't have been kept secret. Its ripple effects would have influenced ship design, mining, and architecture across continents. Yet we see nothing: no precursor technologies, no failed experiments on a smaller scale, no sketches in a monk's marginalia, no legends of a great underwater endeavor. The vaults, if medieval, appear to us not as the culmination of a visible technological evolution, but as a fully formed miracle, disconnected from everything that came before or after. This disconnect is what makes them so endlessly debated. They simply don't fit, no matter how hard we try to squeeze them into our understanding of the past. But to truly grasp why these structures are so baffling to experts, we need to take a closer look at their design, moving beyond the broad debate to the specific, tangible details that have been meticulously mapped. The reconstructed blueprints, pieced together from countless sonar passes and submersible laser scans, present an architectural puzzle that is both familiar and utterly alien. One of the most striking features is the use of corbeled arches, a technique where each successive layer of stone projects slightly inward until the opening is bridged at the top. This is a method we know well from ancient structures like Mycenaean tombs and even some early medieval gateways. It's a clever, strong way to create a doorway or ceiling without a true arch. Seeing it here feels like a point of connection, a thread linking the vaults to known human history. Yet that familiarity quickly dissolves when you examine the precision. The stone joints in these arches are cut with a microscopic accuracy that seems to defy hand tools. There's no mortar used, yet the fits are so perfect that, in the words of one engineer, not even a razor blade could be slipped between the blocks. This level of stonemasonry is more akin to what we see in Incan walls or the finest Egyptian granite sarcophagi than anything from a typical medieval European site. Furthermore, the overall layouts of the complexes don't follow the practical, often asymmetrical plans of castles or monasteries. Instead, they echo principles of sacred geometry, recurring ratios like the golden mean, perfect alignments to cardinal points, and chambers arranged in harmonic progressions. This suggests the builders weren't just engineers, they were philosopher-architects, imbuing their work with a deep, symbolic meaning that we can only partially decipher. Perhaps the most telling evidence of advanced knowledge lies in the features you can't immediately see, the ones designed for a specific, brutal environment. The vaults aren't just sitting on the ocean floor, they're actively interacting with it in ways that reveal profound understanding. Integrated throughout the structures are sophisticated drainage systems, a network of channels and conduits that seem engineered to manage not rainwater, but the immense, constant hydrostatic pressure of the deep ocean. These aren't simple gutters, they're pressure relief valves in stone designed to equalize forces and prevent catastrophic collapse. This implies the builders had a functional grasp of principles we would formally attribute to much later scientists like Blaise Pascal and his work on fluid pressure. They weren't just building, they were solving complex physics problems in stone, thousands of years before the math was supposedly invented. Then there's the material itself. Core samples retrieved by robotic drills have identified the primary building material as a specific type of granite, notable for its incredibly low porosity and high density. This isn't a common, soft limestone that would dissolve over centuries in salt water. This is a rock chosen for its ability to withstand an aggressive marine environment. The real shock came from geological analysis, which showed this particular granite is not local to the region where the vaults were discovered. Its mineral signature points to a quarry location thousands of miles away. This single fact opens up a Pandora's box of logistical nightmares. It means the builders didn't just possess advanced architectural and engineering skills. They also commanded a transoceanic maritime network capable of transporting massive stone blocks across vast distances. This combination of precise stonework, esoteric design, environmental engineering, and global logistics doesn't align with any known medieval culture. It points to a society with a coordinated and sophisticated knowledge base, one that feels either impossibly ancient or entirely separate from the historical narrative we've written for ourselves. So if the architectural analysis presents a puzzle, the scientific attempts to date these structures have only multiplied the questions, creating a timeline that seems to twist and turn in on itself. The primary tool for this has been radiocarbon dating, a method that has revolutionized archaeology by allowing us to accurately date organic materials. The process seems straightforward. Researchers use deep-sea submersibles to carefully extract core samples from the sediment layers that have built up around and within the vault structures. These sediments can contain microscopic shells, bits of plant material that sank from the surface millennia ago, or even charcoal from fires that might have been built on the site if it was ever above water. By dating these organic fragments, scientists hope to establish a chronological bracket for when the structures were built or abandoned, but the results were anything but clear-cut. Instead of clustering around a single date, the carbon-14 analyzers returned a wildly scattered range. Some samples, taken from the deepest sediment layers directly against the stone, suggested a very ancient origin, with dates pushing back as far as 5,000 years, around 3000 BCE. This would place the vault's construction in a time frame contemporary with the earliest pyramids of Egypt or the megaliths of Stonehenge. Yet, other samples, taken from seemingly similar layers just meters away, pointed to a much more recent period in the early medieval era, around the 7th or 8th century AD. This isn't a minor discrepancy of a few decades, it's a gap of over 3,000 years. This kind of inconsistency throws the entire timeline into chaos. Critics of the artificial origin theory pounced on this, arguing it is the strongest evidence that the formations are natural. They suggest that the sediments have been churned up by underwater currents, geological activity, or the burrowing of deep-sea organisms, completely scrambling any reliable chronological record and making it useless for dating the structures themselves. Proponents, however, see a different story in the data. They argue that the wide range of dates might actually hint at a long and complex history of the site, that it was not built in a single campaign but perhaps modified, repaired, or reused by different cultures across vast stretches of time. A sample from 3000 BCE could mark the initial construction, while a sample from 700 AD could be evidence of a later group discovering and utilizing the site, perhaps even attempting renovations. This idea of a multi-period site, while common in terrestrial archaeology, is nearly unheard of for deep-sea structures and adds another layer of profound complexity to the mystery. Perhaps even more telling than the confusing carbon dates is the story told by the stone itself. Geochemical analysis of the granite blocks has provided clues that are just as baffling. Through techniques like neutron activation analysis and mass spectrometry, researchers can identify the unique geochemical fingerprint of the rock, the specific cocktail of trace minerals and elements that acts like a geological DNA test, pinpointing its exact quarry of origin. The results were stunning. The granite did not match any known geological deposits on the nearby continental shelves or in the surrounding area. In fact, its closest match was to a specific and very rare granite quarry located thousands of miles away across the open ocean. This single finding has monumental implications. It means the builders didn't just step outside their front door to gather materials. They embarked on a sophisticated, large-scale mining and logistics operation that would be impressive even today. We are talking about identifying a specific rock source from an incredible distance, organizing a mining expedition to extract massive blocks of this incredibly hard stone, loading them onto seaworthy vessels, and then transporting them across treacherous open waters to a build site that was itself located in one of the most hostile environments on the planet. This implies a level of maritime technology, navigational skill, and organizational capacity that we simply do not attribute to any society from either of the proposed eras, whether it be 5,000 years ago or 1,000. A Bronze Age society simply did not have the ships for such a haul, and while medieval societies had the ships, there is no record or evidence of any kingdom or culture undertaking a project of such staggering difficulty and expense. The stone, therefore, doesn't just date the vaults, it isolates them, placing them in a category all their own, disconnected from the known technological and economic networks of any historical period. The very materials used to build these enigmatic structures seem to actively resist being placed on any timeline we try to construct. This tantalizing connection between myth and potential reality is where the mystery of the Oceanic Vaults takes on an even deeper, more enigmatic dimension. For centuries, perhaps even millennia, human cultures living by the sea have passed down stories of great cities that were swallowed by the waves, legends that speak of pride, punishment, and lost grandeur. The most famous of these is, of course, the story of Atlantis, first described by the Greek philosopher Plato around 360 BCE. He wrote of an advanced island nation, a naval power that conquered parts of Europe and Africa before sinking into the ocean, in a single day and night of misfortune, as divine punishment for its arrogance. For generations, Atlantis was considered a philosophical allegory, a moral tale about the dangers of hubris. But the discovery of structures like the Oceanic Vaults forces us to ask a provocative question. Could these stories be distorted memories of actual, catastrophic events? Could the legend of Atlantis be a folk memory passed down for thousands of years of a real civilization that built with stone and then vanished beneath the sea? The fascinating part is that Atlantis is far from the only story. In Celtic Brittany, the legend of the City of Wise tells of a wealthy and sinful kingdom protected by a great dike, whose keys were entrusted to its king. According to the tale, his daughter, tempted by the devil, stole the keys and opened the gates during a storm, allowing the ocean to flood the magnificent city forever. Similarly, in Tamil traditions of southern India and Sri Lanka, there exists the story of Kumari Kandam, a vast, advanced continent that was lost to the sea thousands of years ago. This lost land is said to have been the cradle of civilization, the origin of the Tamil language and culture, submerged after a series of catastrophic floods. These stories, separated by vast oceans and completely different cultures, share a common haunting thread, a once great civilization now lying silent on the ocean floor. The proponents of a link to the Oceanic Vaults suggest that these pervasive myths are not mere coincidences. They argue that these stories could be the cultural echo of a shared, traumatic event, the actual flooding of coastal settlements at the end of the last ice age, when sea levels rose dramatically, swallowing vast stretches of coastline and any structures upon them. The vaults, in this view, could be the physical proof that these legends were based on a grain of truth, the stone and mortar evidence that these lost worlds were not just fantasy. This line of inquiry doesn't stop with ancient myths. It extends into the tangible, if puzzling, artifacts of the medieval world itself. The most compelling of these is the Piri Reis map, compiled by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis in 1513. This map, a fragment of a larger world map, is famous for its startlingly accurate depiction of the western coast of Africa, the eastern coast of South America, and most controversially, what appears to be the northern coastline of Antarctica, a continent that wouldn't be officially discovered for another 300 years. Even more baffling, the map depicts this landmass free of its present-day ice cap, with details that some claim match subglacial surveys of the continent's topography. How could a 16th-century mapmaker have known this? Piri Reis himself wrote in the margins that he compiled his map from older source charts, dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. This has led some researchers to propose that the map preserves fragments of ancient knowledge, passed down from a seafaring culture with a sophisticated understanding of the world that was later lost. While most mainstream historians attribute the anomalies to cartographic errors, conflations of different sources, or pure coincidence, the map remains a persistent source of fascination. For those studying the Oceanic Vaults, it serves as a tantalizing hint that medieval or ancient societies may have possessed geographical knowledge, and by extension, the maritime capability that far exceeds what we find in our history textbooks. If they could map continents we thought were unknown, could they also have built in places we thought were unreachable? The myths and the maps together weave a compelling narrative of forgotten history, suggesting that our past might be filled with gaps just waiting for a discovery like the vaults to fill them in. Yet, for all the allure of connecting these dots, the harsh light of scientific scrutiny reveals the critical weakness in this approach: a profound lack of concrete evidence. While the stories of Atlantis, Wise, and Qumri-Kandam are emotionally powerful and culturally significant, they remain firmly in the realm of folklore. There is no archaeological evidence directly linking any specific myth to the Oceanic Vaults. No artifacts recovered from the site bear symbols of Poseidon or inscriptions matching the Tamil language. The Piri Reis map, while mysterious, is an isolated document whose anomalies have plausible, less sensational explanations. Building a historical theory on this foundation is like building a castle on sand. It's intellectually seductive and captures the imagination, but it cannot support the weight of a definitive conclusion. These cultural and cartographic puzzles provide a rich, speculative context, a framework of possibilities that guides the questions researchers ask, but they cannot, in themselves, answer those questions. They are the tantalizing whispers of the past, urging us to keep looking, to keep exploring the depths, in the hope that one day we might find the evidence that turns captivating legend into documented history. Even if we set aside the debates over blueprints and carbon dating, we are immediately confronted by the most brutally practical question of all: how could any of this have been built in the first place? The sheer environmental hostility of the vault's location presents a challenge so immense that it seems to render the entire debate moot. We are not talking about building in a shallow, calm lagoon. These structures rest at depths of over 3,000 meters or roughly 2 miles beneath the ocean surface. To put that into perspective, that is deeper than the final resting place of the Titanic. At that depth, the pressure is not just high, it is absolutely crushing, equivalent to having about 290 cars stacked on every square inch of a person's body. Modern engineers use specially designed, multi-million-dollar submersibles with hulls made of titanium and thick acrylic to even visit such places for short periods. The idea of teams of ancient workers spending months or years down there, manually carving and placing multi-ton stone blocks, is on its face a physical impossibility. The challenges only multiply from there. The sites are often located in areas notorious for powerful, unpredictable deep sea currents that can sweep away equipment and destabilize the seabed itself. The water is perpetually just a few degrees above freezing, a cold that would sap strength and numb the mind in minutes, and then there is the absolute, unending darkness. There is no sunlight at these depths, none whatsoever. Without powerful artificial lights, the environment is a void, a blackness so complete it is difficult to comprehend. How would any builder, using only medieval or ancient technology, have illuminated their work? Torches or oil lamps would be useless underwater and would consume the precious oxygen in any theoretical diving bell or air pocket. The logistical nightmare of simply keeping workers alive, fed, and able to see what they were doing is a barrier that feels insurmountable. This has led some theorists to propose a compelling workaround. Perhaps the vaults were not built underwater at all. The most popular version of this idea suggests that the structures were originally constructed on dry land during the last glacial maximum, the peak of the last ice age around 20,000 years ago. During this period, vast quantities of the planet's water were locked up in massive continental ice sheets, causing global sea levels to be over 120 meters, or about 400 feet, lower than they are today. This would have exposed enormous stretches of what is now the continental shelf. It is entirely plausible, even probable, that ancient cultures lived on and built upon these now submerged lands. In this scenario, the Oceanic Vaults could have been hilltop fortresses, temples, or settlements that were gradually abandoned and then slowly inundated as the ice sheets melted and the seas rose over thousands of years, a process that only concluded around 6,000 years ago. While this theory elegantly sidesteps the problem of underwater construction, it immediately crashes into a different set of geological facts. The specific sites where the vaults have been discovered are not on the continental shelf, which typically extends out to a depth of about 140 meters before dropping off into the abyssal plain. These structures are not in shallow water, they are in the deep ocean, resting on the abyssal plain itself at depths measured in miles, not feet. For these locations to have been dry land, sea levels would have needed to drop not by 120 meters, but by over 3,000. This would require a global glaciation event so extreme, so catastrophic, that it would have locked up virtually all of the world's oceans in ice, leaving the planet a frozen, lifeless snowball. There is no evidence in the geological record for such a recent and dramatic event. The ice core samples from Greenland and Antarctica, the sediment layers from ocean floors around the world, all tell a consistent story of the last ice age's more modest sea level change. The deep ocean has been deep and wet for many millions of years, so while the lower sea level theory works beautifully for shallow water sites like Doggerland in the North Sea, it simply does not hold water, so to speak, for the profound depths where the oceanic vaults defy explanation. The environment itself, therefore, becomes the most compelling witness for the prosecution, arguing that the very existence of these structures in their current location is a paradox that challenges our understanding of both history and human capability. This idea of a lost, advanced civilization from a time before history began is perhaps the most romantic and sweeping explanation for the oceanic vaults. Proponents of this theory paint a picture of a global cataclysm, a great reset that wiped the slate clean, leaving only the most durable stone structures as silent, submerged witnesses. They argue that our conventional timeline of human progress is fundamentally wrong, that we are not the first advanced society to walk the earth, but merely the most recent. The logic is compelling in its simplicity. The last ice age reached its peak around 20,000 years ago, and as it ended, sea levels rose by over 400 feet, swallowing millions of square miles of coastal land. This wasn't a slow, gentle process. It was a dramatic, relentless inundation that would have forced entire populations to migrate, their homelands and everything built upon them vanishing beneath the waves. In this context, the vaults aren't an anomaly. They are a predictable artifact, a piece of a lost world that was simply in the wrong place when the waters came. The strength of this argument lies in its powerful comparisons to other enduring archaeological mysteries. Look at Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey, a stunning complex of carved stone circles dating back an astonishing 11,600 years. This site rewrote history, proving that hunter-gatherer societies were capable of sophisticated architecture and symbolic thought thousands of years earlier than previously believed. Then there are the pyramids of Giza, whose precise alignment and massive scale continue to baffle engineers. The theories advocate see a pattern, these are not isolated marvels but fragments of a larger, interconnected tapestry of knowledge. They suggest that the builders of Göbekli Tepe, the architects of the pyramids, and the engineers of the Oceanic Vaults could all be part of a single, pan-global cultural network that shared advanced astronomical, mathematical, and architectural principles. The vaults, in this view, are the missing link, the underwater evidence that connects these disparate terrestrial wonders, proving that a sophisticated proto-civilization spanned the globe before being shattered and scattered by rising seas. Yet, for all its narrative power, this theory faces a formidable and fundamental objection from the mainstream academic community: the overwhelming lack of evidence. Archaeology is a science built on context and accumulation. A single, spectacular find is intriguing, but to prove the existence of a widespread civilization, you need the mundane debris of everyday life: the pottery shards, the trash heaps, the remains of homes and workshops, the tools and the toys. For a civilization advanced enough to build transoceanic structures, we should be finding evidence of their mines, their metalworking, their agriculture, and their trade goods on every continent. But we don't. The archaeological record shows a clear, if complex, progression from simple societies to more complex ones. There is no layer in the soil, no sudden leap in technology that suggests a fully formed advanced culture existed and then vanished without a trace. Critics argue that pointing to a few magnificent, unexplained monuments and calling it proof of a global civilization is a classic case of argument from ignorance. We can't explain how they were built with known technology, therefore it must have been a lost technology. This is seen as a logical fallacy that ignores more plausible, if less thrilling, explanations. The most pointed question from skeptics is also the most difficult to answer. How does an entire advanced civilization simply disappear? Societies leave echoes everywhere, in their genetics, in their languages, in the myths and technologies they pass on to their successors. The Romans left roads and laws, the Egyptians left hieroglyphs and papyrus. A civilization capable of the Oceanic Vaults would have been a dominant force for centuries, if not millennia. Its collapse might have been catastrophic, but its influence would be woven into the fabric of every culture that came after. We would see its impact in the foundational myths of countless societies, in unexpected technological leaps, in inexplicable linguistic similarities across isolated continents. While proponents point to flood myths like Atlantis as this very evidence, critics see only stories, not data. The complete and utter evaporation of a global society, leaving behind nothing but a few deep sea ruins and no genetic or cultural legacy, strikes most historians as not just improbable but virtually impossible. It asks us to believe in a historical vacuum, a clean break in the human story for which there is simply no parallel and no proof. While the idea of a lost Ice Age civilization captures the imagination, another compelling theory attempts to anchor the Oceanic Vaults within a more familiar, though still shadowy, chapter of human history: the age of great medieval maritime empires. This hypothesis doesn't require a cataclysm that erased all evidence. Instead, it suggests that the builders were a known culture whose full technological prowess and architectural ambition have been underestimated or simply lost to time. Proponents of this view look towards the great seafaring dynasties whose ships mastered the ancient trade winds, connecting continents and amassing wealth on a scale that could fund unimaginable projects. The prime candidate often put forward is the magnificent Chola dynasty of southern India. At its zenith around the 11th century, the Chola was a titanic naval power, its influence stretching across the Indian Ocean from the shores of Indonesia to the coast of Africa. Their ships were colossal for their time, capable of carrying hundreds of tons of cargo, troops, and even elephants across thousands of miles of open water. On land, their architectural genius is undeniable, embodied by breathtaking temples like the Brihadiswara in Thanjavur, a massive granite structure topped with one of the largest monolithic stone caps in the world, demonstrating an audacious mastery of scale and engineering. If any medieval society had the maritime reach, the economic resources, and the stone-working confidence to attempt such a feat, the argument goes, it would be the Chola. The theory gains further traction from a rich tapestry of medieval literature and folklore that seems to whisper of such wonders. Tamil Sangam poetry, for instance, is filled with vivid imagery of ancient cities consumed by the ocean, like the legendary Puhar, said to have been lost to the sea. Other texts from various cultures speak in allegorical terms of magnificent underwater palaces, guardians of great treasures, or secret vaults built by gods or demons beneath the waves. While historians rightly caution that these are poetic metaphors or moral fables, not historical records, the persistent theme is striking. Could these stories be distorted echoes of a real, monumental project? A whispered memory of a king so powerful he commanded the ocean itself to guard his riches. This idea proposes that the oceanic vaults were not meant to be submerged forever, but were built as fortified coastal treasuries, perhaps on a natural shelf that was later claimed by a sudden, catastrophic geological event like a tsunami or a rapid subsidence of the land. In this scenario, the construction was a monumental but terrestrial achievement that met a tragic and unexpected end, its true purpose drowned and forgotten within a few generations. However, this seemingly more grounded theory quickly runs aground on the harsh rocks of technological reality. Skeptics present a devastatingly simple counter-argument. While the Chola and other empires like the Phoenicians before them were undoubtedly brilliant seafarers and land-based builders, there is a vast, unbridgeable chasm between building a great temple on solid ground and constructing a multi-chambered complex 2 miles beneath the ocean surface. The challenges are not just of degree but of kind. Mastering the monsoon winds for trade is a world apart from managing the crushing hydrostatic pressure of the abyss. The precise carving of granite blocks for a shrine tells us nothing about how workers could possibly have fitted them together with micron-level accuracy in total darkness, under immense pressure, and without any available oxygen. There is no evidence, not a single sketch, no mention in any chronicle, no precursor technology, that any medieval culture possessed anything resembling the necessary diving technology. The simplest diving bell of the era would have been crushed to splinters at such depths, and the concept of managing air supply, decompression, and underwater tooling would have been pure fantasy. The theory asks us to believe that a society advanced enough to solve these profound engineering problems did so without that knowledge influencing any other aspect of their culture, leaving not a single trace in their otherwise extensive records of their innovations in medicine, astronomy, or warfare. It posits a secret, single-use technology of miraculous capability that appeared, was used for this one impossible project, and then vanished without a whisper, an idea that most academics find more far-fetched than the existence of a lost civilization itself. Yet for all its appeal to rational simplicity, the natural formation theory faces its own formidable obstacles, primarily from the sheer consistency and specificity of the patterns observed. The most significant challenge is the recurring presence of what appear to be right angles and parallel lines features that are exceptionally rare in nature without some form of intelligent intervention. Geology can produce amazing things. The Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland with its hexagonal basalt columns, or the tessellated pavement in Tasmania where erosion has created a stunning grid-like pattern. But these formations are the result of highly specific and uniform processes, like the cooling of lava or the erosion of sedimentary rock along perpendicular fracture lines. The oceanic vaults, by contrast, display a much wider variety of shapes, from perfect circles and arches to long, straight corridors, all within a single, interconnected complex. This diversity of forms in one location is far more suggestive of design than a singular geological event. Perhaps the most difficult hurdle for the natural explanation to clear is the issue of celestial alignment. Detailed analysis of the site's orientation has revealed that several of the main corridors and openings are precisely aligned with key astronomical events, such as the summer and winter solstices or the rising of specific stars that would have been visible thousands of years ago. This isn't a single, coincidental alignment, it's a repeated pattern across the site. While it's possible for a natural rock formation to, by pure chance, line up with a single celestial point on the horizon, the odds of multiple features within the same complex aligning with multiple, significant astronomical events are astronomically low. This purposeful seeming arrangement points towards a culture with advanced knowledge of astronomy, one that would intentionally encode celestial cycles into its architecture, much like the builders of Stonehenge or the pyramids of Giza. A random geological process has no reason, no mechanism, and no purpose to create such a pattern. This leaves us at an intellectual impasse. The natural formation theory provides a comfortable, evidence-based framework that doesn't require rewriting history or invoking unknown civilizations. It appeals to our understanding of geology and the known quirks of human psychology, but it consistently falls short of fully explaining the most intriguing and complex aspects of the vaults: the precise geometry, the sophisticated layouts, and the celestial correlations. It asks us to accept a series of spectacularly improbable coincidences, one on top of another. In doing so, it doesn't so much solve the mystery as it reframes it, challenging us to wonder just how complex and deceptive natural processes can be, and whether our own powerful desire to find meaning might be the greatest mystery of all. Amidst the debates over lost civilizations and maritime empires, another compelling theory emerges, one that shifts the focus from engineering to spirituality. This perspective suggests that the oceanic vaults were never meant to be practical structures in a conventional sense, but were instead profound expressions of faith, designed for a sacred or ritualistic purpose that we can scarcely comprehend. Proponents of this view argue that the very location of the vaults, isolated, inaccessible, and shrouded in the primal darkness of the deep, is the most powerful clue to their function. In countless cultures, the act of descending into the earth or water is a universal metaphor for a spiritual journey, a passage into the underworld or the subconscious to seek knowledge, purification, or communion with the divine. Building in such an impossibly hostile environment wouldn't be a display of technical prowess, but the ultimate act of devotion, a testament to a belief system so powerful it justified an almost unimaginable expenditure of effort and resources. This theory draws fascinating parallels with known underwater sacred sites from various historical periods. In Japan, for example, the submerged ruins of the Yonaguni monument, while itself a subject of debate, is near a traditional site where divers have long paid respects to a deity believed to reside offshore. In India, the ancient city of Dwarka, said to be the kingdom of the god Krishna, has offshore ruins that are a major pilgrimage site, with the waters themselves considered holy. Even in Christianity, holy springs and wells were often seen as gateways to the divine. The key difference, of course, is scale and depth. These comparative sites are in shallow, accessible waters. The oceanic vaults, by contrast, are in the abyss. This suggests that if they were ritual spaces, they were not for public worship but for an elite, perhaps a secretive priesthood or a mystery cult for whom the extreme difficulty of access was the entire point. The journey to the site would have been a perilous initiation in itself, separating the true devotees from the unworthy, and the crushing pressure and absolute darkness would have created an environment of sensory deprivation perfect for inducing powerful visionary states or profound existential revelations. The architectural blueprints themselves are scrutinized for symbolic meaning to support this idea. The recurring use of sacred geometry, the precise alignments with celestial bodies, and the chamber layouts that seem to mirror descriptions of the afterlife in various mythologies are all presented as evidence of a spiritual rather than a secular design. Perhaps these were not vaults for storing material treasure, but for safeguarding something far more precious to their builders: esoteric knowledge, religious relics of immense power, or even the remains of revered figures, placed in a realm beyond the reach of desecration by conquering armies or the ravages of time. The structures could have been seen as a direct conduit to the gods of the deep or the underworld, a permanent, indestructible altar in a place that was both terrifying and holy. However, the greatest weakness of the religious purpose theory is its reliance on subjective interpretation. Without any artifacts, inscriptions, or carvings that explicitly depict deities, rituals, or myths, every conclusion is speculative. What one researcher sees as a chamber designed for a specific purification ritual, another might interpret as a sophisticated water lock for managing pressure. The alignment with a star could be for navigation rather than worship. This theory lives in the realm of symbolism, and symbolism is famously open to a multitude of readings. It provides a captivating narrative framework, but in the absence of any tangible evidence directly linking the structures to a specific belief system, it remains an intriguing possibility rather than a provable fact, a beautiful story written in stone on the ocean floor waiting for its key to be found. And then there is the theory that pushes the boundaries of the debate entirely out of this world, the most controversial and imagination-fueling explanation of all, that the Oceanic Vaults were not the product of any known human culture, but were instead created with the help of an external, perhaps even extraterrestrial, intelligence. This idea, often relegated to the fringes of popular science, argues that the technological leap required to build these structures is so vast, so inexplicable within our current understanding of human history, that it must be the work of a non-human or hyper-advanced external source. Proponents of this view don't just point to the scale of the vaults, but to the almost supernatural precision of their execution. They highlight the micron-perfect joints between multi-ton stone blocks, the advanced understanding of pressure dynamics and material science, and the celestial alignments encoded into the architecture as evidence of a knowledge base that feels anachronistic, as if it was imported from a far more advanced future or from a completely different world. The appeal of this theory is undeniably powerful, tapping into a deep-seated human wonder about our place in the cosmos and the possibility that we are not alone. It offers a clean, if fantastical, solution to the central paradox: if humans couldn't have built this, then someone or something else must have. It transforms the vaults from a historical puzzle into a potential artifact of first contact, a message in a bottle from the stars, or the abandoned outpost of a civilization that visited Earth millennia ago. This narrative has proven irresistibly compelling for books, television shows, and online forums, where the mystery of the vaults is often woven into a larger tapestry of ancient astronaut theories and speculative history. However, this is precisely where the theory collapses under the weight of its own assumptions for the vast majority of academics and scientists. The primary objection is not a closed-minded dismissal of the possibility of extraterrestrial life, but a strict adherence to the scientific principle known as Occam's razor. The simplest explanation that fits the available evidence is usually the correct one. Invoking extraterrestrial intervention is the ultimate example of an extraordinary claim, and as the saying goes, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. To date, there is not a single shred of tangible, verifiable proof to support it. No exotic alloys have been found embedded in the granite. No artifacts with unmistakably non-human iconography have been recovered. No radiation anomalies or other technological signatures have been detected. The entire theory is built on an argument from ignorance. We can't explain how this was done, therefore aliens must have done it, which is considered a logical fallacy in scientific reasoning. Mainstream critics argue that leaping to such a conclusion actually stifles genuine inquiry and represents a failure of historical imagination. It effectively gives up on the puzzle of human ingenuity, dismissing the incredible and often underestimated capabilities of our own ancestors. Throughout history, we have consistently discovered that past societies were far more sophisticated than we initially gave them credit for, from the astronomical accuracy of Stonehenge to the complex metalworking of the Antikythera mechanism. To attribute their achievements to outside forces is, in a way, to do them a great disservice. It ignores the slow, cumulative nature of innovation and the fact that knowledge can be lost, especially after a societal collapse or a major cataclysm. The academic dismissal of the extraterrestrial theory, therefore, is not about arrogance but about methodology. It is a demand for a higher standard of proof and a preference for explanations that, while perhaps less thrilling, remain grounded in the known processes of human culture, geology, and history. The vaults are mysterious enough without needing to look to the stars for an answer. The true explanation, when and if it is ever found, is likely to be a testament to a forgotten chapter of human achievement that is every bit as astonishing as any science fiction story. For decades, the debate over the Oceanic Vaults was trapped in a cycle of speculation, constrained by the limitations of the very tools used to study them. Early submersibles were clumsy, expensive, and risky, their viewports offering only fleeting glimpses of the murky abyss, while sample-grabbing arms could easily damage the fragile structures they were trying to understand. The turning point, the moment the investigation evolved from informed guesswork into hard science, arrived with a new generation of exploratory technology so advanced it feels borrowed from science fiction. The key to this revolution is autonomy. Engineers and marine archaeologists now deploy sleek, torpedo-shaped autonomous underwater vehicles, or a UVS, which are essentially underwater drones programmed with intricate maps of the site. These robots are the perfect investigators, patient, precise, and untiring. They can hover motionless for hours in the crushing darkness, their high-resolution cameras and laser scanners capturing every fissure and angle of the ancient stonework, building photorealistic three-dimensional models with an accuracy down to the millimeter. This isn't just photography, it's digital preservation, creating a perfect, immutable record of the vaults exactly as they are now, protecting them against the inevitable decay of time and any potential damage from future human contact. The technological marvels don't stop at imaging. Perhaps the most groundbreaking tools are those that operate on a microscopic level. Researchers now use sophisticated sediment coring systems attached to these UVS, which can gently plunge into the seabed around the vault's foundations and extract long, layered tubes of mud and silt. These sediment cores are like frozen history books, and their pages are now being read with techniques borrowed from forensic science. By conducting ancient DNA analysis on the microscopic organic matter trapped in these layers, pollen grains from long-vanished surface plants, fragments of deep-sea microbes, or even traces of skin cells or bacteria that might have been shed by the builders themselves, scientists can reconstruct the paleo environment. They can determine what the climate was like when the structure was built, what the landscape above might have looked like, and potentially even find biological signatures of the people who were there. This moves the investigation beyond the stone itself and into the very ecosystem that surrounded it, searching for clues in the dirt that previous technologies could only dream of accessing. Yet, in a twist that defines this entire mystery, these powerful new tools have not provided the clear answers everyone hoped for. Instead, they have compounded the enigma, revealing layers of complexity that no one anticipated. The incredibly detailed 3D maps have confirmed the astonishing precision of the stonework, but they have also identified strange, previously unseen features, subtle acoustic properties in certain chambers that suggest they might have been designed to amplify sound in specific ways, or patterns of wear on the floor that don't align with any predictable flow of water or sediment. Similarly, the DNA analysis has yielded a bafflingly mixed signal. Some sediment layers show a complete absence of any terrestrial biological material, suggesting the site has been deep underwater for tens of thousands of years. But other layers, confusingly, contain tiny traces of pollen from plants that only grew on land during a much more recent, medieval climatic period. This contradictory evidence doesn't neatly support any one theory. It simultaneously gives ammunition to both the ancient civilization proponents and those who argue for a more recent medieval origin. The technology has given us a clearer picture than ever before, but that picture is one of profound and intricate paradox, proving that the truth of the oceanic vaults is far more complicated than anyone ever imagined. At the heart of this decades-long dispute are two brilliant, passionate scientists whose work has come to define the opposing poles of the debate. On one side stands Dr. Elena Vance, a marine archaeologist whose name is now synonymous with the Oceanic Vaults. With a background in classical archaeology and a doctorate in underwater cultural heritage, Dr. Vance didn't just analyze the blueprints from a distance. She led over a dozen expeditions to the site, spending months at sea in her relentless pursuit of evidence. Her central contribution has been a monumental, multi-volume structural analysis of the vaults, in which she painstakingly catalogues every feature that, in her view, screams of intelligent design. She doesn't just point out the right angles, she demonstrates through complex computer modeling how the interlocking stonework creates a distributed load system that perfectly manages the immense hydrostatic pressure, a principle she argues no natural geological process could replicate with such consistency. For Dr. Vance, the vaults are not a possibility. They are a fact of human history waiting to be acknowledged, and she presents her case with the fervor of a prosecutor before a jury, her publications filled with detailed diagrams and forceful, compelling prose. Leading the charge for the opposition is Dr. Robert Hills, a renowned geologist with a celebrated career in deep-sea geomorphology, the study of how the ocean floor takes its shape. Where Dr. Vance sees architecture, Dr. Hills sees geology. His foundational work involved creating incredibly detailed maps of the entire region's tectonic history, charting fault lines, ancient lava flows, and sediment deposition patterns over millions of years. His counter-argument is a masterclass in geological possibility. He proposes that what we call the corridors are actually ancient hydrothermal vents, where superheated water from beneath the Earth's crust forced its way up through fissures in the rock, chemically altering and eroding the surrounding stone into startlingly linear and angular forms over eons. The precision of the stone joints, he suggests, could be the result of a rare phenomenon called spheroidal weathering, where certain types of hard rock fracture along natural crystalline planes, creating blocks that can appear deceptively cut. Dr. Hills accuses the artificial origin camp of architectural pareidolia of seeing what they want to see because they are trained to look for human handiwork, not the slow, mighty, and often bizarre artistry of planetary forces. The clash between these two titans of their fields has transcended academic journals and erupted into the public sphere, turning scientific disagreement into high drama. Their debates at international conferences are legendary, often described by attendees as less of a polite exchange and more of an intellectual prize fight. Dr. Vance, articulate and impassioned, will present a new high-resolution scan of a seemingly perfect archway, declaring it the final nail in the coffin of the natural formation theory. Dr. Hills, calm and methodical, will then take the stage and show a slide of a nearly identical geological formation from a confirmed natural site elsewhere in the world, calmly stating, "The ocean floor is capable of this, and here is the proof." They have appeared on opposite sides of documentary films, written pointed rebuttals to each other's papers, and their rivalry has at times grown personally contentious, a reflection of just how much is at stake for their respective life's work. This isn't merely a disagreement over data, it's a fundamental clash of worldviews of entire disciplines trained to see the world through completely different lenses. Yet, this very public and often heated confrontation has produced an unexpected and valuable outcome. It has forced a new level of interdisciplinary rigor upon the entire investigation. The need to counter each other's arguments has pushed both scientists and their respective teams to refine their methods, seek out new technologies, and consider perspectives they might have otherwise ignored. Geologists now working with Dr. Hills must account for the specific architectural critiques raised by Dr. Vance, while archaeologists on her team have had to become amateur geologists to understand the forces they argue against. This has elevated the entire discourse, moving it beyond simple speculation and into a more nuanced, evidence-based, and profoundly complex conversation. The stalemate between them perfectly encapsulates the core problem of the Oceanic Vaults. The evidence is always just ambiguous enough to support either a breathtaking natural wonder or a revolutionary historical truth, and without that one piece of irrefutable proof, the debate between the human hand and the hand of nature continues to rage, fueled by the dedication of two unwavering experts who see two entirely different worlds in the same set of stones. Yet the very media exposure that fuels public passion also creates a significant problem for the scientists at the heart of the research. The pressure to deliver television-ready revelations can sometimes outpace the slow, meticulous pace of genuine scientific discovery. Researchers like Dr. Vance and Dr. Hills find themselves constantly navigating a difficult line, trying to share their exciting work with the world while also managing expectations and correcting the record when documentaries or articles oversimplify or sensationalize their findings. A nuanced, inconclusive sediment analysis doesn't make for a gripping season finale, but a shocking new clue that rewrites history certainly does. This creates a cycle where the public's understanding of the vaults is often shaped more by dramatic recreations and speculative narration than by the cautious, peer-reviewed papers being published in academic journals. The scholars feel this pressure acutely, knowing that their next grant or public funding could hinge on maintaining public interest, a reality that can, at the margins, influence how and when they choose to present their initial findings. This environment doesn't just shape the conversation, it actively becomes a part of the dispute itself, with each camp occasionally accusing the other of playing to the cameras or tailoring their arguments for popular appeal rather than scientific merit. This growing fascination, however, casts a long and worrying shadow over the future of the sites themselves. The very mystery that draws us in also poses the greatest threat to the Oceanic Vaults' continued existence. Imagine a treasure chest of unimaginable historical value, left completely unguarded at the bottom of the ocean. This is the precarious reality we now face. The primary fear isn't just from the stereotypical treasure hunter with a map and a diving bell. It's from the modern, technologically equipped looter. Advanced side-scan sonar and remotely operated vehicles are no longer the exclusive tools of well-funded research institutions. This technology is becoming more accessible, and in the wrong hands, it could be used to pinpoint and pillage these sites with devastating efficiency. A single artifact removed from its context, sold on the black market to a private collector, could forever erase a crucial piece of the puzzle, a clue that might have been the key to understanding the entire complex. But the danger isn't limited to malicious intent. Well-meaning amateur explorers and even documentary film crews can inadvertently cause irreversible harm. The deep-sea environment is incredibly delicate. The fine sediments that have settled around the structures for millennia act as a protective blanket and a historical archive. The wake from a submersible's thrusters or the careless placement of an anchor could blast this sediment away, erasing subtle tool marks, disturbing the very layers that scientists use for dating, or even destabilizing a precariously balanced wall. Every visit, no matter how careful, carries a risk. This creates an almost heartbreaking ethical paradox. To understand the vaults, we must study them, but the act of studying them could ultimately lead to their degradation. We are, in a very real sense, in a race against our own curiosity. This has led to urgent, growing calls from within the scientific community for the establishment of formal international protections, similar to the UNESCO World Heritage Conventions that safeguard iconic sites on land. The challenge, of course, is enforcement. The ocean deep is a lawless frontier. How do you patrol an area 2 miles below the surface in international waters against intruders? Proposed solutions range from designating the coordinates as a no-go zone for all but permitted research vessels, to the development of permanent, automated monitoring systems that could alert authorities to any unauthorized activity. The goal is not to lock the vaults away forever, but to ensure that any future interaction is conducted with the utmost care, transparency, and scientific rigor, with all findings shared for the benefit of all humanity, not just a select few. At the core of this preservation debate lies the most profound ethical question of all. Should we even be there? There is a powerful argument to be made for a policy of complete non-intervention. The Oceanic Vaults have survived pristine and untouched for thousands of years in their silent, dark museum. Perhaps our role is not to intrude, but to admire from a distance, to learn what we can through non-invasive scanning and modeling, and to accept that some mysteries are meant to remain mysteries. This perspective views the sites not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a sacred trust to be preserved utterly intact for future generations, who may possess technologies and sensibilities that allow them to study the vaults without ever touching them. It is a humbling position that asks us to prioritize the integrity of the site over our own burning desire for answers, a difficult but noble balance between our relentless curiosity and our duty as stewards of the past. The Oceanic Vaults are not alone in their mystery. Scattered across the globe, other enigmatic structures rise from the seabed, each one a puzzle that seems to whisper a similar, tantalizing question. Are we looking at the sunken chapters of human history? Perhaps the most famous of these is the Yonaguni monument, lying off the coast of a remote Japanese island. Discovered in the 1980s, this massive sandstone formation features a stunning array of seemingly artificial features. a monolithic platform, what appear to be carved steps, straight terraces, and even two prominent pillars. The sheer scale and angular geometry of the main structure, often called the monolith, feels overwhelmingly man-made to the untrained eye. Proponents of its artificial origin, led by figures like the late researcher Professor Masaki Kimura, point to specific details like what they identify as quarry marks, a carved relief resembling an animal, and even a surrounding road. They argue that the entire complex is the remnant of an ancient, unknown civilization, perhaps even the mythical lost continent of Mu, submerged by a cataclysmic earthquake thousands of years ago. However, just as with the Oceanic Vaults, the geological community offers a powerful counter-argument. Renowned geologists like Robert Schoch of Boston University have extensively studied the site and concluded that Yonaguni is a spectacular but entirely natural formation. They attribute its bizarrely perfect angles and flat surfaces to a phenomenon known as subaquatic weathering. The region is seismically hyperactive, and the sandstone that makes up the monument is cross-cut by numerous vertical fractures and horizontal bedding planes. Over thousands of years, the powerful currents in the area have exploited these natural weaknesses, eroding the rock along these straight lines and causing large sections to shear off, creating the stunningly architectural appearance. The carved steps are likely just these harder layers of rock resisting erosion at different rates. This natural process is well documented and can be observed in formations on land. The ocean has simply performed the same sculpting work on a grander, more deceptive scale. The debate over Yonaguni perfectly mirrors the stalemate surrounding the Oceanic Vaults, pitting the compelling human desire to see pattern and purpose against the slow, mighty, and often bizarre forces of geology. Then there is the Baltic Sea Anomaly, a discovery that veers into even more speculative territory. In 2011, a Swedish ocean exploration team using sonar was mapping a shipwreck when their screens revealed something utterly bizarre. A nearly circular object about 60 meters in diameter, resting on the seabed. The sonar imagery showed what looked like a giant mushroom cap or a classic flying saucer shape, complete with a series of strange, right-angled formations on its top and a long, trailing track behind it, as if it had skidded to a halt. The internet immediately erupted with theories of a crashed UFO, an ancient alien base, or a lost Atlantean power generator. Subsequent dives to the site retrieved samples and reported that the object seemed to be made of a metal that interfered with all electronic equipment in its vicinity, adding a layer of science fiction intrigue. The anomaly became a global media sensation, a perfect storm of mystery and technology. But as further analysis was conducted, a more mundane, though still unusual, explanation began to emerge. Geologists who examined the rock samples stated that the object was most likely a unique and rare glacial formation. During the last ice age, massive glaciers scraping across the bedrock can deposit large, isolated boulders and carve out peculiar shapes. The runway or skid mark could be the result of a glacial drag. The right-angled features, while strange, could be explained by the way certain types of rock fracture under extreme pressure and cold. The interference with electronic equipment, while odd, could be attributed to the high concentrations of metals like manganese and iron in the nodule-rich seabed of the region. While not every question about the Baltic Sea anomaly has been satisfyingly answered, it serves as a powerful cautionary tale about the rush to interpret mysterious sonar images without thorough, peer-reviewed scientific analysis. It highlights how easily our imagination can be captured by the unknown, and how the deep sea, the largest and least explored environment on our planet, is the perfect canvas upon which to project our most fantastic speculations. Looking at these sites together, the Oceanic Vaults, Yonaguni, the Baltic Sea Anomaly, it is incredibly tempting to connect the dots and see a global pattern, a hidden network of submerged architecture pointing to a forgotten age of humanity. This idea is intellectually seductive, offering a grand, unified theory that would neatly explain so many of history's loose ends. Perhaps a single, advanced seafaring culture traveled the globe, leaving behind these mysterious outposts. Or maybe multiple cultures, now lost to time, independently achieved feats we are only now rediscovering. The comparisons are undeniably enriching, forcing researchers to think bigger and consider possibilities that transcend traditional regional archaeology. Yet, this is where we must apply the brakes of rigorous scientific skepticism. The greatest danger in this comparative approach is the risk of oversimplification. Each of these sites exists within its own unique and incredibly complex geological and environmental context. The forces that shaped the sandstone of Yonaguni are entirely different from those that could have formed the granite of the Oceanic Vaults or the glacial deposit of the Baltic Sea. To lump them together under a single explanatory umbrella is to ignore their distinct characteristics and the specific, site-specific disputes that define them. What they truly share is not necessarily a common builder, but a common problem. They are all located in an environment that is brutally difficult and expensive to study, ensuring that definitive answers remain elusive. This shared ambiguity fuels speculation, but it should not be mistaken for shared evidence. The true path to understanding any one of these mysteries lies not in forcing them into a preconceived global narrative, but in committing to the slow, careful, and unglamorous work of site-specific analysis, where each formation is judged on its own unique merits, free from the compelling pull of a larger and potentially illusory pattern. This is the heart of the matter, the profound question that makes the Oceanic Vaults more than just a curious puzzle. They are a potential key that could unlock a completely different understanding of our own story. If these structures were definitively proven to be both artificial and constructed during the medieval period, the foundations of history as we know it would not just crack, they would shatter. We would be forced to confront a staggering reality, that a society or a network of societies existed with a technological and maritime capability that we have never documented, never suspected, and never accounted for in our grand narrative of human progress. This wouldn't be a minor footnote, it would be a missing chapter, one that tells of seafaring empires capable of feats we thought were centuries beyond their reach. The very definition of the Dark Ages would be turned on its head, revealing instead a period of dazzling, lost brilliance that operated in the shadows, its achievements swallowed not by ignorance but by the sea itself. Such a revelation would send historians and archaeologists back to their libraries and dig sites with a completely new set of questions. Suddenly, every enigmatic reference in a medieval text to sunken palaces or treasure vaults of the deep would have to be re-evaluated not as allegory but as potential reportage. The curious precision of certain ancient maps, long dismissed as fanciful, would demand a second look. It would suggest a web of cultural and technological exchange that spanned oceans long before the age of Columbus, implying that our view of the medieval world as a collection of isolated, struggling kingdoms is hopelessly incomplete. We would have to consider that the greatest achievements of this era may not have been the cathedrals we can see, but the ones we can't, hidden beneath the waves, representing a pinnacle of engineering that was lost to time, perhaps due to a single, catastrophic event that erased not just the builders, but the very knowledge of how to build. Yet, the implications are just as revolutionary if the opposite proves true, if, after all this, the scientific consensus lands on the side of a natural formation. This outcome would be no less of a landmark moment, though for entirely different reasons. It would stand as one of the most spectacular and humbling examples of pareidolia on Earth, a testament to the incredible power of natural geology to mimic with uncanny accuracy the works of intelligent beings. The study of the vaults would push the boundaries of geomorphology, forcing scientists to document and understand new, previously unimaginable processes that can create such complex and deceptive formations in the deep ocean. It would become a classic case study in the scientific method, a cautionary tale about the human tendency to project our own image onto the unknown, and a powerful reminder that nature, in its infinite complexity, is still the most masterful architect of all. But perhaps the most important lesson of the Oceanic Vaults dispute has nothing to do with their origin, and everything to do with the very nature of discovery itself. This ongoing, often heated debate is not a sign of scientific failure. It is a vibrant, living demonstration of how historical and archaeological inquiry is supposed to work. It is a dynamic, self-correcting process, a constant tug of war between evidence and interpretation, between bold hypotheses and rigorous skepticism. These structures, whether man-made or natural, serve as a powerful reminder that our understanding of the past is not a closed book gathering dust on a shelf. It is a living, breathing narrative constantly being revised, rewritten, and enriched by new finds that challenge our most deeply held assumptions. They force us to confront an uncomfortable but thrilling truth that for all we have learned, the past is still full of secrets, and the greatest discoveries may not be in the dirt beneath our feet, but in the crushing, silent, dark miles below the surface of the sea, waiting to remind us just how much we have yet to learn. But behind the high-tech scans and the heated academic debates lies a force just as powerful as any ocean current, one that rarely makes the headlines but profoundly shapes the entire investigation: money. The pursuit of the Oceanic Vaults is not a cheap endeavor. A single research expedition, equipped with a state-of-the-art vessel, a team of highly specialized scientists, and the sophisticated robotic submersibles required to reach the abyss, can easily cost tens of millions of dollars. This immense financial barrier means that the search for answers is almost never funded by disinterested, purely academic institutions alone. Instead, the research is bankrolled by a complex web of stakeholders, each bringing their own hopes, agendas, and expectations to the table. This necessary alliance between science and sponsorship creates a subtle but powerful undercurrent that can steer the entire course of the inquiry, often in ways that are invisible to the public. National governments are frequently the largest backers of these deep-sea missions, and their investment is rarely purely philanthropic. A country that can claim a direct link to the builders of such a magnificent, advanced structure gains a powerful tool for national pride and global prestige. Imagine the cultural and political capital if a nation could prove that its ancestors, and not some unknown or foreign culture, were the master architects of this deep-sea marvel. This desire can lead to what critics call heritage nationalism, where the interpretation of data is subtly, or sometimes not so subtly, pushed towards a conclusion that reinforces a specific national narrative. A research team funded by a particular government might feel implicit pressure to focus on evidence that connects the vaults to that nation's ancient seafaring traditions, while downplaying or dismissing findings that point elsewhere. This isn't necessarily a matter of outright fabrication. It can be as simple as choosing which excavation sites to prioritize, which carbon dating samples to send to the lab first, or which theories receive the most prominent placement in official press releases. The influence of tourism revenue is another potent factor that can muddy the scientific waters. The discovery of a lost city off your coast is not just an archaeological headline, it's a potential economic goldmine. It can put a remote region on the map, attracting tourists, documentary filmmakers, and international attention. This creates a powerful incentive for local and national tourism boards to champion the most sensational, man-made interpretation of the site, regardless of the scientific consensus. A complex, nuanced report concluding that the formations are likely natural but require further study is a difficult sell, but a narrative about an ancient, advanced civilization waiting to be explored is a story that captures imaginations and opens wallets. This commercial pressure can lead to the premature announcement of findings, the exaggeration of certain aspects of the discovery, and a reluctance to publish data that might dampen the public's excitement. The need to maintain a compelling brand for tourists can, at times, find itself at odds with the slow, cautious, and often uncertain process of genuine scientific discovery. Beyond governments and tourism, private entities and individual patrons also play a significant role. A billionaire enthusiast with a passion for the alternative history of Atlantis might fund an expedition specifically to find proof for their beloved theory, directing the research goals towards that objective. While their financial support is crucial, it can come with strings attached, consciously or unconsciously shaping the questions being asked and the kinds of answers that are deemed acceptable. This doesn't mean the science is corrupt, but it can create a confirmation bias within the research framework, where evidence supporting the patron's view is highlighted and contradictory evidence is given less weight. Furthermore, the competitive race for funding itself can create a toxic environment. With so few grants available, research teams might feel compelled to overstate their initial findings or present their interpretations with more certainty than the data warrants in order to secure the next round of financial backing, creating a cycle of hype that is difficult to break. The most damaging consequence of this politicization and commercialization is the potential for the outright suppression or distortion of data. If a finding emerges that directly contradicts the preferred narrative of a funding body, for instance, if a carbon date clearly places the site outside the timeline of a nation's celebrated historical period, or if a geological analysis strongly points to a natural origin, there is a risk that this information could be delayed, downplayed, or buried under layers of bureaucratic inertia. The researchers who made the discovery might find their next funding application suddenly rejected, or their access to the site revoked. This doesn't require a grand conspiracy. It can happen through a series of quiet, administrative decisions made by people who are ultimately protecting an investment or a national interest. This shadowy influence makes the already difficult quest for objective truth nearly impossible, ensuring that the waters surrounding the oceanic vaults remain forever murky, clouded not by silt, but by the very human forces of money, power, and pride. Faced with the immense physical and financial barriers of deep-sea exploration, researchers have turned to the digital realm, using cutting-edge computer-generated imagery and virtual reality to bring the oceanic vaults to the surface in stunning detail. These are not mere artists' impressions, they are painstakingly crafted, data-driven models built upon the very same sonar maps and laser scans that fuel the core debate. The process is a monumental feat of digital archaeology. Specialists in fields ranging from naval architecture to video game design work together, feeding every known measurement, every angle, and every disputed contour of the blueprints into powerful simulation software. The result is a fully immersive, three-dimensional world that anyone with a VR headset can now step into, walking the silent, ghostly corridors of a structure 2 miles beneath the waves without ever getting wet. This technology allows for a form of exploration that is otherwise impossible, enabling scientists to test theories about everything from acoustics and water flow to structural integrity in a perfect, risk-free digital sandbox. The power of this virtual exploration lies in its ability to animate hypotheses that were once confined to paper. For instance, one team used their model to simulate the flow of deep-sea currents through the vault's intricate network of channels and conduits. By digitally releasing particle tracers, they could visualize how water might have moved through the complex, providing compelling support for the theory that these features were indeed sophisticated pressure equalization systems, not random geological formations. Another group focused on the celestial alignments, programming the VR model with the precise positions of stars as they would have appeared thousands of years ago. Donning a headset, a researcher can stand in the central chamber and watch as the sun, on the summer solstice, aligns perfectly with a long, straight corridor, casting a beam of light that illuminates a specific spot on the far wall, a powerful, experiential argument for intentional design that a simple blueprint could never convey. Yet, this incredible tool contains a critical and often overlooked flaw, one that lies at the very heart of the entire mystery. The entire digital reconstruction is only as accurate as the initial interpretation of the disputed blueprints. The process is inherently subjective. When a scan shows a blurred, ambiguous shape, the modeler must make a choice. Do they interpret it as a collapsed staircase, a ritual altar, or simply an oddly shaped rock? These decisions, made at countless points throughout the modeling process, inevitably bake the creator's own biases and theories directly into the digital foundation. A team that believes the vaults are artificial will smooth out rough edges and complete broken lines, creating a clean architectural model. A team leaning towards a natural origin might leave those same features jagged and incomplete, emphasizing the chaotic forces of geology. The final, polished VR experience feels so real, so authoritative, that it's easy to forget it is not a photograph of the past, but a hypothesis rendered in polygons and light, a best guess given digital flesh. This has sparked a fascinating and entirely new front in the debate, moving the dispute from the ocean floor into the realm of digital criticism. Scholars now meticulously analyze these virtual reconstructions, not for what they reveal about the vaults, but for what they reveal about the assumptions of their creators. A paper might be published not on the structure itself, but on the specific interpretive choices made in a popular CGI model, arguing that a particular corridor was widened by 3 degrees based on a speculative reading of a damaged scan. The very tools designed to resolve the dispute have instead become a new battleground, producing competing digital twins of the same site, each one championing a different vision of the past. A viewer exploring Dr. Vance's meticulously ordered virtual temple and then Dr. Hill's digitally rendered natural rock formation would swear they were looking at 2 completely different places, yet both claim to be built from the same raw data. This digital dissonance perfectly encapsulates the central problem. We have built a perfect window into the deep, but we cannot agree on how to interpret the view. The quest to unravel the secrets of the Oceanic Vaults is now accelerating into a new, unprecedented phase, driven by a global consortium of scientists who are no longer willing to let the mystery languish in academic stalemate. This isn't just about another expedition. It's a coordinated, international effort to bring a completely new class of forensic technology to bear on the ancient stone, technologies so precise they can almost make the rocks themselves speak. The most promising of these is a technique called neutron activation analysis. Unlike carbon dating, which relies on organic material that can be contaminated or misinterpreted, this method works by bombarding a tiny, meticulously drilled sample of the vault's granite with neutrons. This doesn't destroy the sample. Instead, it makes the stone briefly radioactive, causing the trace elements within it to emit gamma rays with a unique signature. By reading this signature, scientists can identify the exact minute chemical composition of the rock with astounding accuracy. This creates a definitive geochemical fingerprint, a kind of genetic code for the stone that can be compared against geological databases from around the world. This could finally pinpoint the exact quarry from which every single block was cut, potentially tracing a path across oceans to a specific mountain range or island, providing an undeniable clue to the identity of the builders based on their known territorial reach and trade routes. Simultaneously, other teams will be employing advanced isotopic tracing. This process examines the specific ratios of different isotopes, slightly different atomic versions of elements like oxygen, strontium, and lead that are locked within the crystalline structure of the granite. These ratios are not uniform across the planet. They vary dramatically based on the unique geological history of a region. The ratio of strontium-87 to strontium-86 in a rock, for instance, acts as a deep time clock, revealing the approximate age of the bedrock from which the quarry was formed. The oxygen isotopes can tell a story about the ancient climate and water present when the minerals crystallized. By analyzing these isotopic signatures, researchers won't just be guessing at the stone's origin. They will be reading a detailed history book written in atoms, one that can reveal not only where the stone came from but potentially even when it was quarried, offering a second, independent line of evidence to cross-reference against the confusing carbon dating results. This ambitious push is only possible because of a landmark shift towards open international collaboration. The era of isolated research teams competing for glory and funding is giving way to a united front. Institutions from Japan, renowned for their deep-sea robotics, are partnering with European teams that specialize in geochemical analysis, while American universities contribute their expertise in digital mapping and data synthesis. They are pooling their financial resources, their intellectual capital, and most importantly, their access to the world's most powerful supercomputers, which are needed to process the immense datasets these new techniques will generate. This collaborative spirit represents a profound understanding that a puzzle of this scale and complexity cannot be solved by any one nation or discipline alone. It requires a symphony of expertise, all playing in harmony. The ultimate goal of this monumental effort is to finally break the decades-long deadlock, to deliver a dataset so clear and unambiguous that it will force a consensus. Yet, there is a palpable and sobering awareness among every scientist involved that the outcome is far from certain. The history of this mystery teaches that for every question answered, two new, more perplexing ones seem to emerge. It is entirely possible that the neutron activation and isotopic data will converge on a single, logical point of origin, a known medieval quarry or an ancient mining site finally providing the long-sought smoking gun. But it is equally possible that the results will be even more baffling. What if the geochemical fingerprint points to a geological formation that is now also submerged under miles of water, suggesting a quarry that itself was on a lost continent? What if the isotopic dates for the stone's formation are wildly inconsistent from block to block, suggesting they were gathered from disparate corners of the globe by a culture with a reach we cannot fathom? The next chapter in this story may not be one of resolution, but of deeper, more profound bewilderment, proving that the greatest enigmas are those that refuse to be solved, continuing to challenge our perception of the past and our place within it. Perhaps the most profound lesson from the decades-long debate over the Oceanic Vaults is how perfectly it mirrors the scientific process itself, with all its messy, human, and often frustrating glory. This isn't a story of clean, linear discovery leading to a eureka, a moment. It's a case study in how knowledge is actually built, through a slow, grinding cycle of proposal, challenge, refinement, and quite often passionate disagreement. We saw a bold hypothesis emerge from those first sonar images, a spark of possibility that these shapes were something more. That spark was then immediately subjected to the cold water of skepticism, a necessary and healthy part of the process that forces proponents to sharpen their arguments and seek better evidence. This back and forth isn't a sign of failure within the scientific community. It is the very engine of it, the clash between Dr. Vance's architectural analysis and Dr. Hills's geological surveys isn't a problem to be solved, but a dialogue that, at its best, pushes both sides toward greater rigor and clarity. The dispute shows us that scientific truth is rarely delivered by a single paper or expedition, but is instead forged in the fiery crucible of peer review, replication attempts, and the collective scrutiny of the entire community. This ongoing mystery also serves as a powerful, humbling reminder of the limits of our own understanding, especially when gazing into the deep well of the past. We have a natural, almost innate desire to categorize, to label, and to fit new discoveries neatly into our existing historical frameworks. The Oceanic Vaults defy this impulse completely. They refuse to be easily placed, stubbornly resisting every box we try to put them in, whether it's medieval, ancient, or entirely natural. This intellectual discomfort is actually a gift. It forces historians and archaeologists to practice a vital form of humility, to acknowledge that our current timeline of human achievement is a working draft, not a sacred text. It asks us to hold our conclusions lightly and to remain open to the possibility that the past was far more complex, more inventive, and more surprising than our records suggest. The vaults stand as a monumental question mark, challenging the arrogance of assuming we have the past all figured out and inviting a more nuanced, less certain approach to interpretation. This humility naturally leads to the second great lesson: the undeniable necessity of interdisciplinary collaboration. For most of history, academic fields have operated in their own silos, with archaeologists talking to archaeologists and geologists conversing with geologists. The Oceanic Vaults smashed those silos to pieces. Suddenly, to even begin to understand the site, a marine archaeologist had to become a passable geologist to understand pressure and rock formations. A geologist, in turn, had to learn the principles of sacred geometry and architectural engineering to properly debate their counterparts. The conversation had to expand to include climatologists who could model ancient sea levels, materials scientists who could analyze the granite's composition, and astronomers who could verify the celestial alignments. This dispute proves that the biggest mysteries of our world do not respect the artificial boundaries we've drawn between academic disciplines. The most compelling answers will always be found in the overlapping spaces between fields, in the collaborative, sometimes chaotic, exchange of ideas between experts who speak different technical languages but share a common goal. The future of exploration, especially in such frontier environments, belongs to these hybrid teams. Beyond the mechanics of science, the enduring fascination with these underwater structures touches on something much deeper within the human psyche. We are, by nature, pattern-seeking creatures. Our brains are hardwired to look for faces in clouds, constellations in stars, and meaning in random events. This innate tendency is a double-edged sword. It's what allows us to recognize the sophisticated geometry of the vaults as potentially significant, but it's also what can lead us to see intentional design where there might only be random, natural beauty. This internal conflict is at the core of the dispute. It's a battle between two fundamental human drives: our powerful need to find order and purpose in our surroundings, and our equally powerful capacity for rational skepticism, which urges us to question those very interpretations. The vaults have become a Rorschach test on the ocean floor, reflecting back whatever the observer brings to them: our yearning for lost civilizations, a faith in natural processes, or a hope for contact with something beyond ourselves. And that, perhaps, is the ultimate lesson: the relentless, decades-long pursuit of answers, despite the maddening lack of clear resolution, speaks to our species' most defining trait: an insatiable curiosity. We are not pursuing this mystery because it is easy or profitable. We are doing it simply because it is there. The drive to know, to explore, and to understand is a fundamental part of who we are. The Oceanic Vaults, in their silent, inaccessible majesty, represent the purest form of that quest. They remind us that the journey of inquiry, with all its dead ends, heated arguments, and tantalizing near misses, is often just as valuable as the destination. The pursuit itself expands the boundaries of our technology, forces new forms of collaboration, and keeps our sense of wonder alive. Even if we never definitively prove who built them or how, the questions they force us to ask have already enriched our understanding of the world and our endless, passionate place within it. That's the incredible thing about a mystery like the Oceanic Vaults. It doesn't just belong to the scientists and historians, it belongs to all of us. Every single one of you watching has a unique perspective, a different way of looking at the world, and that's exactly what a puzzle of this scale needs. So we have to ask you, after this journey through the deep, what's your verdict? When you look at those precise blueprints and the impossible depths they're found in, what story do you see unfolding? Do you find yourself convinced by the geological data, seeing in these formations the incredible, deceptive power of nature to sculpt the seabed into something that looks for all the world like a lost city? Or does your intuition pull you toward the idea of a forgotten chapter in our own human story? A powerful culture with knowledge that was lost to the rising seas, its achievements now silent beneath the waves. Maybe you have an entirely different theory we haven't even considered, a connection to a myth or a historical figure that makes perfect sense to you. The comment section is your space to become part of this investigation. Lay out your case, debate with other viewers, and share the ideas that this mystery sparks in you. Your perspective is a valuable piece of this puzzle, and let's take that a step further because the implications are what make this so thrilling. Let's just play out a scenario for a moment. Imagine that tomorrow, a new dating technique provides irrefutable proof that the granite blocks were quarried and placed in the 11th century. Not in some vague ancient past, but in the heart of what we traditionally call the medieval era. How would that single piece of information reshape everything you thought you knew about that period? It would mean that somewhere, against all the odds we've documented, a society was operating on a level of technological and organizational sophistication that we never dreamed was possible. It would suggest that our timeline of human innovation isn't a straight line of progress, but a story with branching paths, dead ends, and forgotten peaks of genius that were tragically erased. The history books would need not just a new chapter, but an entire new volume. The very definition of what's possible would have to expand, forcing us to look at every other unexplained ancient marvel around the world with a new, more open mind. That's the power this mystery holds. It's not just about the past, it's about challenging our entire understanding of human potential. This conversation you're about to have in the comments isn't just for fun, though it certainly is that. It genuinely matters. When you share your thoughts, you're adding to a global conversation that pushes interest in this topic forward. Researchers and documentary makers absolutely pay attention to public fascination, and a lively, engaged community of people who are passionate about uncovering the truth helps ensure that funding and resources continue to flow toward these deep-sea missions. Your curiosity helps fuel the next expedition, the next robotic dive, the next breakthrough. You are quite literally helping to write this story as it unfolds. So tell us what you think. Do you side with Dr. Vance and the architects, or Dr. Hills and the geologists? Is there a third option you're convinced everyone is overlooking? Your voice is a crucial part of this ongoing exploration, and we can't wait to read what you have to say. The disputed blueprints of the Oceanic Vaults represent far more than an academic disagreement. They are a profound and enduring question mark etched into the very fabric of human history. This mystery is not confined to a single discipline, but exists at the vibrant and often contentious intersection of archaeology, geology, and mythology. It weaves together the hard, empirical data of sonar scans and core samples with the timeless, haunting power of legend, creating a narrative that is as compelling as it is challenging. These structures, resting in their silent, abyssal gallery, refuse to be categorized easily. They defy our every attempt to place them neatly within a known era or culture, forcing us to confront the uncomfortable possibility that our historical timeline, the story we tell ourselves about our own past, might be incomplete or even fundamentally flawed. What makes this puzzle so captivating is its powerful reminder that history is not a static collection of facts stored in textbooks, but a dynamic and evolving story. It is a narrative that is constantly being revised, rewritten, and enriched with each new discovery. The past is not a closed book gathering dust on a shelf. It is a living, breathing entity filled with gaps, surprises, and chapters we have not yet learned how to read. The Oceanic Vaults are a stunning testament to those missing pages. They remind us that for all our advancements, for all our digging through layers of soil and scrutinizing ancient texts, vast portions of the human journey remain shrouded in darkness, waiting for a curious mind or a new technology to bring them into the light. This is not an end, but a continuation of that great journey of inquiry. As our technology evolves, allowing us to dive deeper, map more precisely, and analyze more minutely than ever before, we may yet uncover truths that fundamentally rewrite our collective memory. The next expedition, the next core sample, the next breakthrough in dating technology could be the one that provides the key to this lock. The greatest discoveries often come from the places we least expect, from the courage to question accepted wisdom and the humility to admit how much we still have to learn. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into one of history's most captivating mysteries. Your curiosity is what keeps the search for answers alive. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you can dive deeper